Chapter 227. Dead Ale, who was soaring in the sky, looked calm. There was a kind of natural and majestic atmosphere when he raised his hand. He glanced at Dustless and Sasori of the red sand standing behind him on the ground. The feeling of flying in the sky spontaneously rose in his heart. This is a good place to display my art to the limit. Joining the Akatsuki was really the right choice. Focusing his eyes on the huge explosion below, the killing intent in Deidara's eyes disappeared in a flash. The instant art of explosion must have a perfect place and the best audience to be implemented incisively and vividly. The Sand Village, one of the 5 major countries, was the best place to test it, and what made him most unhappy was the Uchiha clan's Sharingan and Sasori who often went against him. A large amount of explosive clay was spat out from his hand. Deidara was indeed suitable for this kind of dexterous work. In just a few breaths, he created a large group of explosive spiders. Immediately, it was like a fairy scattering flowers all over the Sand Village. Instantly destroying the Sand Village, such a masterpiece is in line with the essence of my pursuit of art. Looking at the slowly falling explosive spiders, Deidara smiled gloomily as he looked down at the ninja village below, and the killing intent in his eyes was even deeper. Ha! Boom! A series of explosions suddenly resounded through the sky, and the endless blazing flames engulfed the entire sand-hidden village. Even people hundreds of meters away could feel the blazing flames and violent tremors, and the sand-hidden village at the center was even more shaken. It's a pity that it's useless. The Sand Village has already put a barrier in front of it, and those small spiders are not enough to destroy it. Dustless looked directly at the village in front of him that was swallowed by the fire, and his face was always indifferent. Under the observation of the Sharingan, the transparent barrier was as stable as before, and there was no sign of collapse. The number of explosive spiders was good, but their combined power was not enough to destroy this barrier. Next is the Jinchuriki. Seeing that the fire swallowed a large area of the Sand Village, Deidara nodded with satisfaction, and his sight spread out, and at the same time, he began to look for the Ichibi's Jinchuriki. That kid couldn't have been hidden by the sand-hidden village. How is that possible? In the sky, Deidara's voice suddenly stopped as he looked at the intact sand-hidden village below with his mouth twitching fiercely. After the flames were extinguished, the sand-hidden village was intact. His pupils suddenly shrank, and only then did he see the solid transparent enchantment. Your art doesn't seem to work, Deidara. Sasori raised his head and glanced at Deidara in disdain, then he said indifferently, if you want to kill the Sand Village in one blow, you have to use C0 explosion, at least. It's indeed impossible. It's unrealistic to kill the sand and the Jinchuriki in an instant. Let's do it together. Don't forget that the other companions are still waiting for us to seal the Ichibi. Ignoring the ashen-faced Dead Ale, Dustless's gaze swept straight ahead. He frowned slightly and looked at the sand groups sweeping over from afar. It seems that the enemy is already going to fight back. The sand-hidden village has been operating in the desert for more than half a century. Compared to the invaders, we are naturally more familiar with them. I'm afraid that when we stepped into this land, they had already discovered our traces. Dustless said, and he wasn't surprised. As the saying goes, there is no such thing as an airtight wall in the world. What's more, in the past few years, the eyes of the major countries have been focused on the Akatsuki. Although they don't know the location of the Akatsuki's headquarters, everyone knows that the Akatsuki loves Jinchuriki or bijou. Therefore, the villages with bijou have become the targets of other ninja villages' spies. Whoosh! Looking around, the dense sandstorm in front of them was coming head-on. The sand up to more than 10 meters high turned the sky into its own color. The momentum was monstrous and almost covered the sky. It was like the end of the world. How can my art be defeated by this vulgar ninjutsu? Looking through the heavy sand, Dead Ale gloomily stared at Gaara in the distance with a ferocious smile. He looked at the oncoming sandstorm with disdain, and a cold light gathered in his eyes. Looking at the desert with a sneer, Dead Ale controlled the clay bird under his feet to rush straight without fear. Dead Ale is enough to deal with the Ichibi's Jinchuriki, Gaara, we don't need to do it. Dustless's calm eyes fell on Sasori, then he turned his head and looked forward. Suddenly, he found that there were more dense clay spiders in the air. Sasori also stared at the explosive spiders in the air with a stunned expression, and his mouth twitched fiercely. This range has already affected you and me. He seems to want to bring the two of us together. Staring at Dead Ale who was floating in the sky with uncertainty, Sasori of the Red Sand said hoarsely. His tone of speaking was particularly blazing. His whole person suddenly turned into a bloodthirsty ferocious beast. His eyes emitted a dim light, choosing people to devour. It's not that it seems, but it will definitely affect the two of us. Dustless replied. In the future, during the decisive battle between Dead Ale and Uchiha Sasuke, this kid will use self-explosion to affect Hoodlum, the masked man, mercilessly. With a sigh, Dustless didn't expect this kid to be so vengeful. Obviously, Dead Ale deliberately made him look good, and Sasori was just a bystander. This damn brat. Glaring at Dead Ale fiercely, Scorpio knew that Dead Ale was doing this deliberately. He quickly took out the puppet he had kept for many years to resist. He was not Dustless, who could ignore physical attacks. Boom, the boundless explosion began once again, and the spiders that filled the sky exploded once again. The scale was even larger than before, and the scorching heat waves that spread out in all directions revived the prehistoric ferocious beast. The terrifying power directly dispersed the sandstorm. Including Dustless and Sasori, they were swallowed by the fire. Chapter 228. The explosive clay next to Dustless and Sasori was also detonated. The power of the explosion was extremely terrifying. Even if the water droplets gathered together, it could form a wave that swallowed the human body, not to mention the explosive clay. The harsh roar resounded throughout the sand-hidden village, and the transparent barrier that was used to protect the village also exploded. That guy seems to ignore my clay explosion. Deidara turned his head, and the corner of his eyes fell on Dustless. He couldn't help but calm down, and his high confidence instantly fell to the bottom. His heart was full of haze. He had been working hard for Dustless. If this guy can really ignore physical attacks. No, he can ignore physical attacks. Speculation was quickly replaced by determination. Deidara remembered the battle between Dustless and Conan, as well as Uchiha Itachi and Kisame during the invasion of the sand-hidden village. Dustless escaped from Inoki's dust release attack by some strange means. It seems that the gap between me and this guy is still big. Dead Ale secretly clenched his fists and said rather unwillingly. Just now, he had indeed deliberately tested the gap between himself and Dustless. It would have been better if he hadn't tried. The cruel reality immediately struck him deeply. Perhaps it was because Dead Ale was an optimistic person who liked to struggle, so he quickly walked out of the haze. His eyes narrowed slightly as he stared straight at the rapidly approaching black dot in front of him. The red-haired Gaara was reflected in his eyes. I didn't go to you, but you came to me on your own initiative. You're quite brave, little rascal. Deidara sneered, but his eyes were cautious. His arrogant momentum quickly converged. He knew that strategically despising the enemy and tactically attaching importance. Gaara is also Ichibi's Jinchuriki. His strength is not bad. Now he has a relationship with a Jinchuriki. It's worth it for him to treat him with caution. Those who invade the sand-hidden village must pay the price. Gaara looked at Deidara with killing intent, and his hostility broke out like a flood. Influenced by Uzumaki Naruto's fearless spirit, he has also found his own path, and his hatred of the world has become his determination to protect the sand-hidden village. But even so, Gaara was extremely cautious. The powerhouses gathered in the Akatsuki organization were all genuine powerhouses. All of them were S-level rebellious ninjas. Their strength was genuine Kage-level powerhouses. Any one of them could match the Kage of each village. You want me to pay the price? Ridiculous. A mere brat like you dares to boast shamelessly. Not only will I capture you and bring you to justice, I will also swagger out of this godforsaken place. Dead Ale was so angry that he laughed. He vented all the discomfort and anger he found from Dustless on Gaara. He waved his hand and used his strongest trick. The ferocious mouth in his palm swallowed the explosive clay directly. C2, Jinryu. The winged Jinryu suddenly appeared in the sand-hidden village. Deidara's eyes were full of killing intent, and he immediately jumped up and flew into the sky. Is it really okay for him to act so recklessly? Sasori frowned and was quite worried. It would be troublesome if he killed Gaara. Although the explosion just now was huge, it couldn't hurt Sasori, and Dustless beside him was the same. Both of them were intact. Don't worry about him. Although Deidara is reckless and impulsive, he is not the kind of person who doesn't care about the consequences. Moreover, we are worried about Deidara and not our situation, Sasori. Dustless looked back leisurely, and there were two figures behind him. He had seen both of them before. Dustless chuckled and said, "We haven't seen each other for many years, Jiraiya." "Ah. We have seen each other many times, but you ignored me. I am looking forward to meeting you again, Dustless-kun." A soft voice came, and he looked up. It was May of the Mist. What a shocking and unexpected combination. Sasori looked at the strange combination in front of him, and his expression was very unnatural. Konoha and the sand-hidden village were allies, and it was reasonable for them to help each other. But what did it have to do with the mist? This is also inevitable. It is because of the sudden rise of the Akatsuki that the 5 major countries are in danger. They have to put aside their old grievances and have united to deal with you. May licked her red lips and immediately smiled at Dustless. Her clear voice was as pleasant as a silver bell. It was like the bright sun in the winter, dispelling the coldness in people's hearts. Wuchin, turn back before you're saved. Even if you're strong enough to fight against 1,000 soldiers, you're still too weak to fight against the 5 great countries. In the end, you'll still be digging your own grave. Don't go astray. Jiraiya looked at his former teammate with a complicated expression. He tried to persuade him. After all, he was his former teammate, and he really couldn't do it. Jiraiya, maybe you don't know. In fact, I have hated your arrogant attitude since a long time ago. Dustless lowered his head and frowned. He used to hate Jiraiya's tone. He always looked down on others with the attitude of a winner. No one was special, and no one was qualified to say who was right and who was wrong. The winner was the king, and the loser was the bandit. This was the truth of the ancient times. You haven't changed at all. You always think that your beliefs and persistence are right, and other people's persistence is wrong. What qualifications do you have to deny others? Do you really think you are the savior, Jiraiya? Wuchin sneered, you always think that you are special. What a joke. You are the same as your disciples. No wonder you are master and disciple. And, Dustless stared at Jiraiya and May with cold eyes. His voice was extremely cold. Maybe the Akatsuki doesn't have the power to look down on the 5 major countries, but you two can't make a big wave. Go, Sasori. Chapter 229. Jiraiya obviously expected that Dustless would refuse his proposal and took the initiative to attack. As one of the Sannin, except for his genjutsu resistance, Jiraiya's attributes in all aspects stood at the top level of ninja, and his strength couldn't be underestimated. Almost instantly, he used body flicker jutsu to Dustless's side. Jiraiya, your opponent is me, Sasori of the Red Sand. Sasori immediately stood in front of Wuchin. For the famous Sannin of the Shinobi world, he wanted to ask for advice. He wanted to see whether he was just pretending to be a big-tailed wolf or a fox pretending to be a tiger. Feelu amber, tail spike. A sharp tail suddenly whizzed out from behind, jumping with a sharp cold light, like a snake rushing towards Jiraiya's face. So fast. Jiraiya's pupils suddenly shrank, his body suddenly stopped, and immediately retreated, falling back to Terumi Mei's side. He looked at the sharp spike cautiously, and his whole body was cold. If he didn't react fast enough, his throat might have been pierced by the tail. It's worthy of being the strongest organization of the renegades. Any one of them is enough to rival the Kage of the villages. Jiraiya took a deep breath, and at the same time, he couldn't help but rejoice. Fortunately, the number of people in the Akatsuki organization is only a few, otherwise, the world may be completely subverted. This old guy is so old, but his pure reaction is still so fast. Ordinary ninja would have been separated from his body. Looking at Jiraiya expressionlessly, Sasori was secretly shocked. With the growth of age, all aspects of human will gradually degenerate. The Jiraiya in front of him gave Sasori a feeling of not retreating but growing. His reaction speed can no longer be described as human. Don't be surprised, the opponent is a Sannin, you can't be careless, this is just his surface. Dustless cautiously said to Sasori. The reputation of Sannin is naturally not fabricated. Instead of worrying about others, it's better to worry about yourself, Dustless, Kun. A ghostly voice came from behind, and a strong fragrance rushed into his ears and nose. Terumi Mei's figure was like a ghost behind Dustless. Pincer attack, the idea is quite good, but it's useless, and, this smell is really disgusting. Waving his hand, Wuchen tried to disperse the rich fragrance that came into his ears and nose. Wuchen looked quite dissatisfied. He was used to the elegant and natural smell of Otsutsuki Higuro. He was very disgusted and uncomfortable with the fragrance in front of him. However, these words made Jiraiya and Sasori confused. They didn't understand and looked at Dustless. Especially Sasori and Jiraiya, they smelled themselves and thought that Dustless was talking about them. Damn brat. Mazes to SSSS. Others may not understand herses, because was to her understood. Others may not twos, but she understood it of her. Saying that the smell on my body is disgusting, good boy. Staring at Dustless, Mei's phoenix eyes were burning with killing intent. The scattered killing intent turned into countless dense eyes and stabbed straight at Dustless. What a ferocious woman, glancing back, Wuchen turned his head. His whole body was covered in a golden sacred light. Wu Chen, who was shrouded in the bright golden light, was particularly sacred. There was a feeling of inviolability. He easily resolved Terumi Mei's attack, and then looked at Terumi Mei with interest. Your body has grown a lot, but your head hasn't. Have you forgotten the scene of the battle a few years ago? I'm immune to physical attacks. Looking at Mei indifferently, he nodded slightly and said softly, the brat who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth has grown a lot, but his strength is still not enough to be praised. Her whole body glowed, and Dustless lost its texture as she whizzed straight towards Mei. Seeing that Dustless had completely disappeared, Terumi Mei had goosebumps all over her body. She reacted immediately, but it was still too slow for Dustless who was rushing towards her. Goodbye. Golden light gathered at his fingertips. Dustless looked at Mei indifferently. When he was about to kill Mei, a sharp cold light came from behind him. Frowning slightly, Dustless withdrew his attack and dodged the attack with his elemental transformation, easily dodging the fatal sneak attack. Sure enough. Seeing Dustless dodging his attack, Jiraiya smiled slightly, and his tone was a little more confident. Immediately, he looked at Dustless with a strong fighting spirit, and his eyes were full of eagerness. This guy seems to be aware of some of the weaknesses of glinting fruit. His pupils shrank slightly, and Dustless secretly said in his heart. Jiraiya seemed to be a rough man on the surface, but but in fact, he was a man who did things without any loopholes. Glinting fruit is not without weaknesses. First of all, it is restrained by gravity, and second, every time it moves at light speed to attack people, it must be materialized. For example, when using light speed kick to attack the enemy, it must be materialized. It's impossible to directly turn into light and rush over. In addition, due to the straight-line nature of light, it can't turn while moving. Obviously, Jiraiya was aware of these problems. Perhaps since the moment Dustless joined Akatsuki, he has been studying the weaknesses of these invincible abilities. For me now, any of your techniques are useless. Seeing Jiraiya's face full of testing, Dustless shook his head and hit him mercilessly. Taking a step back, if one day the ability of glinting fruit is really restrained, the ability of Kekkei Genkai is enough to ensure that Dustless can sleep peacefully. Do you even put me in your eyes? Sasori stared at Jiraiya angrily. Even if his heart was dead, he was still angry at the moment. Jiraiya ignored him again and again to attack Dustless, treating him like air. It was outrageous. Chapter 230. It was no wonder that Sasori of the Red Sand was so annoyed. After all, he was a Super S-level treasured ninja. In the past, he even killed the third Kazekage, who was known as the strongest in history, and made him into a puppet. As a strong person, he naturally had the pride of a strong person. However, in front of Jiraiya, he instantly became a pawn and was even ignored by Jiraiya. How could he not be angry? It seems that the situation is not optimistic, I can only drag it out. Jiraiya saw Sasori staring at him, and his heart sank. Dustless was a super-dimensional monster-type player, and now there was a puppet master helping him. Although it was still a 2v2 situation, it was an asymmetrical war. In other words, this battle was already doomed from the beginning, and Mei and Jiraiya belonged to the losing side, and they were about to face the inhumane torture. I can only wait for reinforcements to come. After pondering for a while, Jiraiya suddenly made a decision. There was no need to fight Dustless. He could only wait for the reinforcements of the 5 major countries to come and wipe out the Akatsuki in one fell swoop. Although the 5 major ninja villages haven't completely united, their strategy to deal with the Akatsuki was the same. The Mizukage-mei's personal appearance explained everything. The 5 major countries sent people to ambush the Akatsuki. As long as they can hold on for a while, reinforcements will come. Sure enough, as I thought, although the Akatsuki only has a few people, they are all experts. Mei's heart also fell to the bottom, and her mood was particularly depressed. The Mist Sanbai and Rokubi were forcibly taken away by the Akatsuki. The Mist should be desperate to deal with the Akatsuki, but the cruel reality made her firm heart waver. So far, the 6-tailed beasts that were taken away by the Akatsuki haven't appeared yet. This is a huge force that can't be ignored, and it can even change the whole situation. Mizukage-sama, is there something wrong? Jiraiya looked at Mei with a puzzled expression, and his brows couldn't help but frown. In such a special time, he couldn't think too much. No problem, leave that Uchiha Dustless to me. Terumi Mei shook her head resolutely when she heard this. She quickly hid the panic in her eyes, and then said to Jiraiya. Her tone was filled with hostility. Jiraiya nodded. Although he was confused, he couldn't say much. After all, Mei's identity was the Mizukage of the Mist Village. Her identity was above him, and Jiraiya didn't have any official title. Although the Sanin's reputation wasn't weaker than the Mizukage could command the Mist Ninjas, but he couldn't. What an annoying gaze. Dustless's eyebrows were gloomy, and his eyes were locked on Terumi Mei. That gaze made him feel uncomfortable, especially Terumi Mei's eyes, which made Dustless angry. He felt like he was being treated as prey. Let me see where you get the confidence to challenge me. His eyes narrowed, and the light that shot out was exceptionally cold. The bone-piercing cold light made people not dare to look at him directly. His scorching gaze seemed to be able to blind people's eyes. However, unexpectedly, Mei didn't retreat and took the initiative to attack. On the other hand, Sasori, who had long been unhappy with Jiraiya, launched an attack on Jiraiya, and decisively took out his trump card, which was a powerful puppet made by Sandaime. Facing the magical magnet release, Jiraiya was also exhausted for a while. He couldn't join forces with Mei to eliminate Dustless. You dare to fight me one-on-one, you really don't know how to write the word death. Dustless looked at Mei faintly, and the sneer on the corner of his mouth became more obvious. He sneered and said, "Or do you think I won't hit a beautiful woman?" The evil and dark eyes shot out from his pupils, and the focus of his gaze was on Mei. "You're really brave. I'm using Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and you still dare to look at me like this." Seeing Mei looking at his eyes, Dustless was puzzled. It's a well-known fact that you can't look at the opponent's eyes when fighting against a ninja with Sharingan. The black pupils turned into scarlet five-pointed Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and the powerful eyes were filled with palpitating power. Even Jiraiya, who was fighting with Sasori in the distance, was stunned. At this moment, Dustless gave people the feeling that he was a demon in human clothing, extremely evil. Don't look at his Sharingan, the Uchiha clan is best at Genjutsu. Jiraiya thought that Mei didn't know the power of Sharingan, so he shouted at her, "Dustless's control of Sharingan has reached an incredible level. Sharingan is his specialty." In the past, Jiraiya and Dustless fought against the Sand-Hidden Village and participated in the battle against the Rock-Hidden Village. Naturally, Jiraiya knew how terrifying Dustless's use of Sharingan was. Perhaps it's just a casual glance, and you don't realize that you're in the Genjutsu world. It's ridiculous to say it, but that's the fact. The Genjutsu of Sharingan is so terrifying. Is it useful? When she sees the Sharingan, it means the end of everything. Dustless indifferently glanced at Jiraiya, who was entangled by Sasori, and smiled indifferently. Some Genjutsu can't be defended just by knowing its weakness. Tsukimi. The world in Mei's sight suddenly changed, and she was eroded by Dustless's spiritual power that poured into her mind, and her whole body appeared in a crimson world. This is his Genjutsu world. Carefully looking at the unknown world in front of her, Mei said in a deep voice, and secretly guarded against the strange environment in front of her. She had a strange feeling that everything in this strange world is her enemy. It's useless, since you were forcibly pulled into the world of Tsukimi by me, the outcome has been decided. Everything in this world is under my control, and I am the god of creation. I advise you not to resist, so as not to suffer physical pain. Suddenly appearing in front of Mei like a ghost, Dustless looked at the pretty face in front of him, and a playful smile flashed in his eyes. Let me show you something interesting. In front of Mei's eyes, a crystal screen-like square frame suddenly appeared, and a fighting scene suddenly appeared on it. The content was the scene when Dustless and Conan went to capture the Sambai, including the final scene of the fight between Conan and Mei. Of course, the fierce fighting scene between Mei and Conan, as well as the secretly watching, Dustless with a sneer on his face were all played in the crystal frame in front of her. "You bastard, I'm going to kill you." Mei saw that she was fighting with Conan, and Dustless was hiding in the distance as an audience with a smile on his face, and there was a playful sneer on his face, which immediately made Mei furious, and her beautiful eyes almost spewed out fire. She raised her hand and swept it over. "I should have said that I am the god of creation in this world, and you will only suffer if you resist me." Shaking his head, Dustless stared at the flying jade hand, and the frivolous smile on the corner of his mouth became even more obvious. His whole person seemed to be a different person, and it was extremely strange. He said with a strange smile, "If you don't stop, I don't mind replaying the scene of that day. You bastard, you better not be too complacent." Mei's face was livid, and the hand that swept toward Dustless also stiffened. She quickly retracted her jade arm, and her fierce eyes scraped the proud face of Dustless. If she could, she would definitely tear that stinky face into 8 pieces. She never thought that the face that used to be calm in the face of everything would be so annoying at the moment, but it was precisely because of this that May suddenly felt that Dustless was somewhat human. It turns out that this guy also has the temperament of a human. In the past, Wu-chin gave to Rumi May the feeling that he was like a sculpture. He didn't have the feelings that a human should have. He was like a bright moon that people looked up to. Although his current appearance was a little bad, it finally gave him a layer of color that a human should have. He was not as old-fashioned and indifferent as before. "What's so funny about you?" Slightly frowning, looking at the smiling face of May, Dustless asked with a displeased face. At the moment, this girl was a fish on the chopping board, but she still had the mood to laugh. "Tell me your purpose. You deliberately let my genjutsu hit you. What is your conspiracy?" Even if she was stupid, it was impossible for her to look directly at the Sharingan, especially Dustless's Manjikyu Sharingan. May not only knew about it but also saw it. The genjutsu of the Sharingan was known to the world. May looked at Dustless's eyes. Obviously, it was intentional. Everyone knew that there must be a demon behind this. You saw through it. May just smiled when she heard this, but after thinking about the current situation of the mist, her smile quickly disappeared. She stared at Dustless's face and said seriously, "I'm here to cooperate with you." May's face was serious, and she didn't look like she was joking. The situation of the mist wasn't good. They had a lot of advantages outside the isolated island, but they also had a lot of disadvantages. They couldn't compete with the other 4 great villages. And the most important thing is the sudden emergence of the Akatsuki organization. They seized the 6-tailed beasts with overwhelming power. Even if all the ninja villages of the 5 major countries were gathered together, May didn't think that the odds of winning were much, or even that there was no chance of winning. Since they were going to hell, it was better to collude with the Akatsuki. Maybe the mist would be destroyed by the enemy forces in the future, but they wouldn't die early. At least, they wouldn't die early. But if they fought with the Akatsuki, their destruction would be close at hand. Cooperation, with you. A trivial person who is about to die dares to talk about cooperation, ridiculous. Looking at May with a sneer, Wu-chin didn't hide the contempt on his face. The basis of cooperation was mutual benefit. Cooperating with May's village could reduce a strong enemy, but it still didn't make much sense. What's more, as long as he kills May directly, the Mist Village under her lead will inevitably collapse. Maybe in this sinister world, the Mist Village will become the target of all Shinobi villages. In other words, as long as I have a bargaining chip to move you, we still have a chance to cooperate, right? A confident smile appeared on May's face as she asked Wu-chin. Her tone was filled with calmness. What exactly is this little girl planning to do? Dustless's pupils shrank, and his brows were tightly twisted together. He couldn't help but be suspicious. He was curious about what kind of bargaining chip May had. He didn't think that the mist was qualified to cooperate with him. In that case, why don't you tell me? If you can move me, we can discuss cooperation. If you can't, you should know the result. Looking at May calmly, Wu-chin said softly. Although the leader of Akatsuki is Pain on the surface, the 2 masked men behind the scenes are naturally Uchiha Obito, and the other is Wu-chin himself. It's just that the role of the masked man is now replaced by the puppet Uchiha Kagami he controls. If the conditions are right, Dustless can naturally persuade Pain to agree to cooperate with the mist. Chapter 231. The smile on Terumi May's face became more obvious, outlining a soul-stirring arc. Even Dustless, who lived among the beauties, was slightly sluggish. He unnaturally avoided Terumi May's gaze. There was no need to deliberately dress up. The seduction that was imperceptibly emitted was the most fatal. You will definitely be interested in this information, and you can't refuse me. May's smile quickly disappeared as she looked at Dustless seriously. This was her bet on the future of the Mist Village. She couldn't afford to fail, and she couldn't afford the consequences of failure. If she failed, the Mist Village would be swallowed by other big countries. The purpose of the Akatsuki is the Jinchuriki. At present, the only remaining Jinchuriki are the Kyubi and the Nibi, and the Ichibi Jinchuriki you are chasing. Mei's eyes flashed, and her tone suddenly increased a lot. The Nibi Jinchuriki of the Cloud Village seems to be a bit strange. If you want to start with that little girl, I advise you to hurry up. What do you want to say? Dustless frowned slightly as he asked with displeasure. He always felt that Mei's words had a hidden meaning. Mei's eyes were fixed on Dustless's body, and she replied directly, "You seem to have killed his younger brother, Killer Bee, and Yondaime Reikage couldn't wait to get rid of you. This doesn't seem to be related to the basis of our cooperation. If that's the case." Unfortunately, the cooperation failed. Dustless's calm face was filled with murderous intent. He didn't want to hear such a trivial question. Even if the fourth Reikage hated him, Dustless still lived freely for many years. A man who changes his face faster than flipping a book. Terumi Mei muttered in dissatisfaction and no longer kept Dustless in suspense. She bit her thin lips and said in a deep voice, "The lunatic Reikage seems to have imprisoned the Nibi Jinchuriki. If something unimaginable happens, he seems to intend to bury Yujito Nibi and the Nibi in her body together." Terumi Mei took a deep breath. She couldn't help but sweat for Reikage's madness. Killing a Jinchuriki was something that he could do. "If he dares, I will wash the Cloud Village with blood." The murderous aura spread in all directions. Wu Chen's tone was as cold as an iceberg. His eyes were blood red, and his body was surrounded by black fog. He looked like a soul-sucking messenger from hell, which made people shudder. Even with Terumi Mei's mentality, seeing Dustless in this state, she subconsciously stepped back. Their target is indeed the tailed beasts. Terumi Mei looked at the change in Dustless's expression. To be able to anger him like this, it showed how important and indispensable tailed beasts were to Akatsuki. Damn Reikage, the green luster in his eyes was more ferocious than a beast. Dustless found that he had never wanted to kill someone so badly. And with Reikage's crazy character, Dustless didn't think that he couldn't do it. He still knew Reikage's ruthlessness. In the future, in the Fourth Shinobi World War, this old guy will kill Uzumaki Naruto if he doesn't obey. If the situation gets out of hand, Reikage will definitely kill the Nibi himself to completely prevent future troubles. This is enough to prove the sincerity of the Mist Village. Taking a deep breath, Terumi Mei raised a faint smile. It was very charming, like a spring breeze, looking at Dustless seriously. "Your chips are still a little short. Unless you tell me where Nibi is imprisoned, or give Nibi to me, I can reluctantly accept your proposal." Shaking his head, Dustless flatly rejected. If she wanted to cooperate with him based on such worthless information, then Terumi Mei was overestimating herself. "Are you trying to cheat?" Terumi Mei's pretty face suddenly collapsed, and her slender fingers indignantly pointed at Dustless. Terumi Mei didn't release her nether chi, and cursed Dustless in her heart. After cursing Dustless dozens of times, she stared at him with dissatisfaction. "That's not what you said before. So what if I cheat?" Dustless sneered disdainfully and sarcastically said, "Don't you think it's ridiculous that you want me to drag the Mist Village from hell to heaven? Everything has a price, this is not a problem." After a quick exchange of glances, Terumi Mei's expression became resolute. She was now in hell, and there was no way back. When she told Dustless that Reikage was going to kill the tailed beast, it meant that there was no way back. Terumi Mei had to agree. This was the reality, there was no turning back. Deidara should be finished soon. Thinking of the passage of time, Deidara should also solve the Ichibi. Just when Dustless was about to solve the Genjutsu world, Terumi Mei's slightly shy voice sounded. I just saw the part of your body that was exposed, I didn't see other parts. Don't worry about it, you don't have to worry about marriage in the future. Anyway, I won't tell anyone. It seemed that Dustless saw Terumi May's worry. He shrugged and said calmly, this is an unavoidable factor. After all, you were our enemy at that time, and I must pay attention to your words and deeds. As an enemy, it's good that I didn't attack you with Conan. Then shouldn't I thank you for not killing me? Terumi May was so angry that she laughed. The corner of her mouth twitched violently. Her eyes were spitting fire as she stared at Wu Qin. She had never seen such a shameless person who inverted right and wrong. He was peeking at others but said it in such a dignified manner. She would never forget Wu Chen's wretched smile. If you want to thank me, I can only accept it. Ignoring Terumi May's anger, Dustless calmly said. Including the time of the Third War, and later when he went to the Mist Village to catch the Sambai, and today, it was already 3 times that he let her live. It was reasonable for her to thank him. Chapter 232. Jiraiya and Sasori were also fighting fiercely. The range of their battle was also very large, with a radius of more than 1 kilometer. Worthy of being one of the Sannin, Jiraiya, I really can't underestimate him. Not only is he not weaker than me, but I was even inferior to him in the confrontation just now. This old guy is still so strong. Sasori stared gloomily at Jiraiya, who also had a heavy face, and couldn't help but take a deep breath. This old guy is too terrifying, especially after he summoned those 2 strange toads with Jiraiya. Sasori's weakness became even more obvious. Looking up, he saw 2 toads standing on each of Jiraiya's shoulders, and a lot of tiny pimples appeared on the bridge of Jiraiya's nose. He had entered Sage mode. Damn, what's going on? I just summoned 2 stinky toads. How did my strength become so much stronger? Sasori was expressionless, but he was puzzled. He naturally didn't know what the so-called Sage mode was, and he had never seen it before, but at this moment, his greatest interest was to dissect Jiraiya's body. What a troublesome guy. Jiraiya, who entered Sage mode, wiped his sweat. Although he had the upper hand with the power of Sage mode, Sasori of the Red Sands puppet manipulation ability was really terrifying. It was as if he was a living person, and the magical magnet release was particularly troublesome and impossible to guard against. Little Jiraiya, every time you summon us, the enemy is not ordinary. An old voice came from the toad's mouth on the left side of Jiraiya, and the tone was a little dissatisfied, because when Jiraiya summoned them, it was never a good thing. Yes, boy, I have to cook for the children. The toad on Jiraiya's right shoulder also complained to Jiraiya. From the magnetism of the voice, it was obviously a female elder. Hearing this, Jiraiya just smiled bitterly. This was indeed an undeniable fact. Over the years, when he summoned the 2 toads of Mount Mayaboku, he encountered unprecedented strong opponents. This boy in front of me seems to be very unusual, and the Kekiai Genkai of that puppet is very troublesome. I can't be careless. Fukasaku Sennin cautiously stared at Sasori's puppet. His toad face was full of caution. The ability to control gold dust could not be described as a headache. That's the 3rd Kazekage of the Sand Village. His disappearance triggered the 3rd Shinobi World War. It seems like he was forcibly captured and made into a puppet. Jiraiya's tone was very heavy, and at the same time, he felt incredible. He naturally knew the strongest Kazekage in history, and he even fought against him once in the past. Akatsuki is really a monster that affects the world's peace. Jiraiya said in a low voice. If the 3rd Kazekage didn't go missing, then maybe the 3rd World War wouldn't have broken out. To some extent, the person who turned the 3rd Kazekage into a puppet was the culprit. It's my honor to be praised by the Sannin. Sasori lowered his voice and said in a hoarse voice. After all, Jiraiya was a figure who dominated the ninja world during World War II. You have such strength to begin with. You don't need my flattery. Jiraiya said and looked at Sasori with appreciation. Whether it's strategy or strength, being able to forcibly erase the third Kazekage is enough to prove that Sasori is extraordinary. Jiraiya's eyes couldn't help but dim. He looked at Sasori with a complicated expression and sighed, "Both of you are peerless geniuses. The only pity is that both of you are like dushless, both of you stepped on the evil path." Jiraiya's mouth suddenly raised a self-deprecating smile. Remembering the words of dushless before, he suddenly realized that he was just a passerby in the long river of fate. He wasn't qualified to criticize others. Everyone has their own story in life. You don't have to like him, but you are absolutely not qualified to criticize him. It's really like what Dustless said, you are a person who likes to preach, but, a hoarse voice gushed out from Sasori's mechanical throat, mixed with the sound of steel, making people shudder. Immediately, his voice stopped abruptly. Looking at Jiraiya, he raised his voice and said, "The puppet made from the corpse of Jiraiya, one of the Sannin, must be very powerful, so give me your body, Jiraiya." Sandaime Kazekage's puppet suddenly roared and stood in front of Sasori, staring at Jiraiya in the distance. Sasori's voice was even colder, as if he was a ghost messenger from hell. Whoosh! Sasori controlled the corpse of the third Kazekage to jump into the air, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Iron Sand Shigure. Whoosh! A dense amount of iron sand roared, and the iron sand was deformed into small particles. There were countless of them, and they carried out a large-scale attack like a shotgun. The speed was so fast that it was difficult to catch with the eyes. There is no possibility of avoiding, in that case. I can only fight head-on. The hesitation in his eyes quickly turned into determination. Jiraiya's natural chakra erupted rapidly, and the rushing chakra all gathered in the palm of his hand. The huge blue energy ball was clearly visible, and it was madly devouring the chakra in Jiraiya's body and increasing its size and power. Senjutsu, Otama Rasengan. Jiraiya jumped up with the high-speed rotating chakra ball in his hand, and he rushed straight toward the iron sand that was roaring down from the sky. The Otama Rasengan in his hand that contained the power of nature was also thrown out, and he was not afraid of the dense iron sand. Boom boom boom, at the moment when the black force ray and the dark blue halo came into contact, the void suddenly trembled violently, and a blazing wave of air was thrown out. The power was not ordinary. The iron sand that looked extremely hard was destroyed by the force of the celestial method, Super Kodama Rasengan. It was even directly ground into iron powder. Although it was a momentary confrontation, the power of the two was not at the same level. Chapter 233. Seeing his jutsu being destroyed by Jiraiya, Sasori's eyes suddenly became gloomy, and his eyes were filled with killing intent, as cold as frost, and his whole body was surrounded by a majestic chill. He thought that Sasori would go up and fight Jiraiya to the death, but the former calmed down as if nothing had happened. He just quietly observed Jiraiya and the two toads on his shoulders. His chakra seems to be wrong, it's more powerful than mine, and it seems to be integrated with some other elements. Sasori's eyes narrowed slightly, revealing the light of wisdom. A qualified ninja not only needs to know how to defeat the enemy, but also learn from the enemy's moves to improve himself. It doesn't seem to belong to the inheritance of the Kekkei Genkai. It's really rare. Sasori said with emotion, and his eyes were shining. Obviously, he was surprised by Jiraiya's ninjutsu that he had never seen before, and even had a faint desire to possess it. It was obviously a sparse and ordinary chakra, but it seemed to be integrated with some unknown force. That's it, I'm going to capture your sand village. After activating Sage Mode, Jiraiya's strength skyrocketed, and he made a lot of progress in all aspects. His hand seals were extremely fast, and almost in the blink of an eye, Jiraiya already completed the seal. You want to capture me? You're really arrogant. Staring at Jiraiya with uncertain eyes, the killing intent in Sasori's eyes became more intense. When he was about to take out his strongest card to fight with Jiraiya, Dustless's voice suddenly came. At the same time, Jiraiya's jutsu was also completed. Turning other people's ninja village into a monster, and then patting your ass and leaving. There's no such good thing in the world. Senjutsu, Gomen. The senjutsu was a mixture of 3 kinds of ninjutsu, and the power of the toad oil and the wind release developed the power of the fire to the limit. The terrifying and frightening super large-scale fire rolled over, and even Sasori felt the aura of death that he had never felt before. Looking up, it was the combination of senjutsu of Mount Myaboku and Jiraiya, and its power couldn't be underestimated. Senjutsu. But there are so many flaws. I'll play with you next time, Jiraiya. Dustless appeared out of thin air and landed beside Scorpio. At the same time, golden bones overflowed from his body and wrapped around Dustless and Scorpio. The thick bones formed an absolute defense. Although immortal techniques were powerful, they could not shake the golden bones at all. What an evil feeling. What technique is this? Shima Sennin and Fukasaku Sennin looked at each other in dismay. They could see the astonishment and disbelief in each other's eyes. The horror in their eyes was obvious. Ever since the 3 of them teamed up to release the sensei spell, this was the first time they were easily resisted. The golden skeleton bathed in the sea of fire was like an existence that could restrain celestial spells. Its solid defense could not be broken through at all. Even if the fire surrounding the golden light engulfed it, it could not melt it. The abnormally thick skeleton was clearly similar to the negative emotions of the tailed beast, perhaps even more so. Golden skeleton. He seems to have released this technique in the past. It seems to be called something like Kansusunu. Jiraiya suddenly recalled the technique he used when he teamed up with Dustless in the past. Although it was different today, the evil aura was still very similar. Dustless also mentioned this technique to him in the past, and there were some vague memories in his mind. The Uchiha clan's Sharingan. This evil eye power is not weaker than the tailed beast. Sasori, who was deep inside the Susanoo, sighed with emotion. His stooped body slightly raised, carefully observing the huge skeleton, he was stunned. It was not difficult to see that this was only a small part of it, the scale was not even 1%. Sasori didn't dare to imagine how amazing it would be if these bones were reassembled one day. Senjutsu Jiraiya, in my opinion, let's stop here today. See you later. Seeing that Jiraiya was about to fight, Dustless's calm tone suddenly interrupted him. He had to remind him of the current situation. At the same time, he pointed to the unconscious Terumi Mei on the other side. There was no point in fighting like this. It seems that the other side is also done. Slowly raising his eyes and looking at the giant white bird in the distant sky, Dustless nodded. Deidara was clearly visible above, as well as Gaara, who was dragging his tail, could also be seen. However, Deidara seemed to have some problems. His face was pale and weak. He was obviously still holding a broken arm in his hand. His sleeve was still scarred with blood stains. There was no doubt that this broken arm was naturally his own. It's really embarrassing. Scorpio originally wanted to open his mouth to mock Deidara, but he shook his head after thinking about it. Recalling his previous situation, he decided to forget it. Although he did not lose to Jiraiya, it was a fact that he was at a disadvantage. There was nothing to be proud of. What's more, Deidara was a bit embarrassed, but he still completed the task. 2 giant white explosive clay birds fell from the sky. Dustless and Scorpio looked at each other and jumped up. Goodbye, Jiraiya. Dustless looked indifferently at Jiraiya, who seemed to have aged dozens of years in an instant. He retracted his gaze and swept straight towards the distant sky. He could understand and feel the sadness in Jiraiya's heart. Under the reflection of the setting sun, the entire sand-hidden village was in this blood-red setting sun, showing a sign of the setting sun. Jiraiya's back was particularly stooped, as if as long as the evening wind erodes him, he will be annihilated in an instant. The capture of Ichibi is finally completed. Terumi Mei, the hidden chess piece, has also been placed. Next, we just have to wait quietly for Nibi's information. Above the endless void, the big bird made of explosive clay flew forward quickly. Its destination was naturally the cave that was sealed before. Chapter 234. In the dark and gloomy cave, even if the light was dim, one could vaguely see a giant with a huge body. It was full of the smell of decay and vicissitudes, as if it came from ancient times. The desolate atmosphere made people dare not underestimate it. The giant looked ferocious, and its 9 ferocious eyes were very evil. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was the incarnation of an evil spirit. Its whole body was uneven, like a dead tree, without any signs of life. There was no doubt that such a ferocious and huge body was naturally the Gedo Mazo. His thick fingers were pointing upwards, and each of his 10 fingers occupied several figures. Naturally, they were also the members of Akatsuki organization. All of them were calmly standing in their own positions, waiting for Dushless, Sasori, and Deidara. Why are you dawdling? Don't tell me you've been killed. After a few hours, Fei Duan finally couldn't help but grumble. It was no wonder that Haydn was so dissatisfied. He was an impatient person, and now he had to wait in this dark cave for a few hours. It was too uncomfortable. Impossible, there must be some unexpected situation that delayed it. A light and sweet but also unusually indifferent female voice sounded from the darkness. The tone was resolute, and mercilessly denied Haydn's statement. The light voice was like a stone falling into the sea, setting off several feet-high ripples. It immediately attracted the attention of all the members of the Akatsuki organization, and they looked at the looming figure in the darkness. Even Uchiha Itachi's eyes flashed with ripples. He looked at the hazy figure. He didn't expect that the dark angel, who was usually cold like an iceberg, would speak for others. Conan, could it be, Pain, who was sitting on the top of the Gedo Mazo's head, also flashed with surprise. He looked at Conan, who was on the finger of the Gedo Mazo below. So far, Conan was the only woman in the Akatsuki organization. It was self-evident who spoke for Dushless. This is not a bad thing. With a smile on his face, Pain was silent. He quietly closed his eyes and rested. Suddenly, he felt a lot lighter, and the stone that had been pressing on his heart disappeared. Nagato, who was controlling Pain, breathed a sigh of relief. Yahiko was dead, and he really didn't want to see Conan go with him. His biggest wish was for Conan to have a good home in the future. Even if Uzumaki Nagato didn't like Conan's new home, especially his foxy smile, there was no doubt that he was a trustworthy person. Those 2 art masters won't die so easily, not to mention they're still dustless. Kisame said with certainty. After all, he is an S-class ninja. How can he be killed so easily? In addition, there is also Uchiha Dushless. If he is killed so easily, it will be ironic for them. After all, they are from the same organization, especially when he was defeated by Dushless in the past. Let's wait. Itachi opened his eyes. He never thought that Dushless would be killed so easily. After all, he was his elder brother. Although the reason was a bit ridiculous, it was the truth. Time passed quickly, and in a blink of an eye, half an hour passed. Just when Haydn couldn't help but complain again, Pain, who was sitting on the Gedo Mazo, suddenly opened his eyes and looked straight at the cave in front of him with Rinnegan. Is it Zetsu? The indifferent voice lingered in the gloomy cave for a long time, and then he saw the Nepenthes breaking out of the ground, and Zetsu formed by Inyang people came into view. Are those 3 guys dead? Tell me and make me happy. Staring at Zetsu, Haiden asked with interest. He looked forward to Zetsu, but he was destined to be disappointed. Dustless, Sasori, and Deidara soon appeared. You are not dead yet, how can I be willing to die? Deidara's sneer resounded in the dim cave, and then 3 figures appeared in front of everyone's eyes, but their clothes were really unflattering. Deidara, you are so fragile. You will definitely be the first one to die in the future. Looking at Deidara with disdain, or the broken arm in his hand, Haiden also chose to ridicule him, but his heart was inevitably silent. Bickering is bickering, but Deidara's strength is still well known. Now his arm was broken by brute force, which is enough to prove the extraordinariness of the enemy. Including Sasori's body, there are some messy gaps. The 5 major countries seem to have joined forces. Although there is no sign of a complete union for the time being, I believe that it won't be long before they will abandon their past grudges and completely come together, Black Zetsu said hoarsely, and everyone can hear the heaviness in his words. After all, the power of the 5 major countries is definitely not so easy to resist. Perhaps there are many S-class ninjas in the Akatsuki, but there are more S-class ninjas in the 5 major countries. You seem to have been ambushed. Pain just nodded thoughtfully when he heard this. This is also what he expected. He then looked at Dustless and the others, and his voice was low. It seems that the people who ambushed you are not simple. Sasori and Deidara are quite embarrassed, especially Deidara with a broken arm. It can no longer be described as embarrassing. Terumi May of the Mist Village and Jiraiya of the Sannin. Without any concealment, Dustless said truthfully. A person who could force Scorpio to be in a difficult situation, without thinking, he knew that this person was not an ordinary person. The 5th Mizuki and Jiraiya. It turned out to be him. There was a faint ripple in Rinnegan's eyes. Pain's eyes flashed with a strange color and a fierce light. He secretly decided that even if one day he meets Jiraiya, his former teacher, he will kill him. For Pain, anyone who hinders the development of world peace must be punished by God. Even his former teacher Jiraiya is no exception. Chapter 235. Looking at Tendo Pain casually, Dustless didn't bother to talk nonsense. He didn't need to get involved in the grievances between him and Jiraiya. This was a private matter between them, and Dustless, an outsider, was not qualified to intervene. Temporarily seal Ichibi. After pondering for a while, Pain decided. Jiraiya was just a passerby in the long river of life. He shouldn't worry about such a small character. He wasn't qualified. Hearing this, the members of the Akatsuki nodded, and at the same time, looked at the half-dead Gar with pity. This genius boy who just became a Kazekage was about to fall. He could be said to be the shortest Kazekage in history. Dustless also jumped onto the Geto Mazo and immediately attracted Conan's attention. Is there something wrong? Seeing Conan looking at him, Dustless touched his nose and asked awkwardly. Being stared at by such a beautiful girl like Conan, Dustless felt extremely uncomfortable. Even if Conan was over 30 years old, the traces of time did not leave on her face. No. Retracting her gaze, Conan replied calmly, as if she was looking at a sculpture just now. Her expression was very calm. No, my ass. Dustless glared at Conan and secretly slandered her in his heart. Looking at Conan's indifferent face, Dustless was too lazy to ask more. As the saying goes, a woman's heart is like a needle at the bottom of the sea. When she wants to say it, she will say it. When she doesn't want to say it, it's useless to ask. At the same time, Sasori and Deidara also returned to their positions. All the members of the Akatsuki returned to their positions, and the scene suddenly became serious. They looked at each other, nodded, and immediately made the same hand signs. Phantom 9 seals. Kakaka, the tightly closed mouth of the Gedomazo opened like a stone door, and the breath of decay and vicissitudes came out from its throat. The dense fangs flashed with dazzling light in the dark space. At the same time, Gaara, who fainted on the ground, also floated in the sky, wandering like duckweed. The Gedomazo's mouth suddenly spewed out a special energy fluctuation. The energy fluctuation that had never been seen before was like a tailed beast or the natural enemy of Jinchuriki, covering Gaara's whole body. In the blink of an eye, majestic chakra swept out of Gaara's body. This disastrous chakra was obviously not the chakra of humans. It was like a collection of negative emotions. Hatred and evil were not something that humans could possess. Without a doubt, it was Shikaku's chakra in Gaara's body. Shikaku also seemed to feel the existence of its natural enemy and began to struggle desperately. The chakra that overflowed from the surface returned to Gaara's body. You still want to resist? Fool, get out here. Pain looked disdainfully at the chakra that returned to his body. His Rinnegan burst out with cold light, and chakra gushed out as if it was free, increasing the strength. The other members of the Akatsuki did the same. Increasing the output of chakra, Shikaku's chakra that retracted into the body was slowly pulled out again. The disastrous chakra filled the entire cave. Even Shikaku's chakra that was pulled out trembled slightly with fear and dread. What the hell is this psychic beast? It seems that the tailed beasts are afraid of it, and it gives off a very ominous feeling. Uchiha Itachi looked at the Gedomazo without a trace, secretly peeking at the huge body of the Gedomazo. The corner of his eyes glanced at the big mouth of the Gedomazo, and he felt like his soul was being swallowed. The members of the Akatsuki looked at this behemoth with interest. Obviously, they also noticed Shikaku's fear. This feeling of encountering a natural enemy really puzzled them. No one expected that this ugly big guy could make the tailed beasts afraid. This is a matter of course. With a mysterious smile, Dustless closed his eyes and concentrated on sealing the tailed beasts. Even if Ichibi had never seen the Gedomazo and didn't know what this thing was, there was an indescribable throbbing or fear in the depths of his soul. It's necessary to ask him. His doubtful eyes fell on Dustless, and Uchiha Itachi secretly decided in his heart. The place where his eyes were focused was Dustless's cheek, which always gave him a feeling that he knew everything. Pain just stood there silently, taking in the changes in everyone's expressions. Then he closed his eyes directly and continued to seal the tailed beasts. He didn't intend to explain. Time passed quickly, and the dark cave remained dark. No one knew how long it took, but the chakra of the tailed beast in the Gedomazo was getting more and more majestic, while the chakra fluctuation of the tailed beast in Gaara's body was getting smaller and smaller. The other side was also quickly preparing. As an ally of the sand, Konoha immediately sent ninjas to rescue the Kazekage Gaara. The performance of the other countries wasn't that great. The water country was fine. After all, Mei was the shadow of a village, and she came all the way here to support the sand-hidden village. This made the sand-hidden village feel honored and flattered. Of course, if the sand knew that Terumi Mei came thousands of miles to collude with Dustless, they would probably vomit blood. As for the cloud and the rock, they naturally didn't deal with each other. It was understandable that they didn't like each other. After all, Anoki killed the third Reikage, the father of the fourth Reikage. Therefore, in the end, only Konoha of the Land of Fire made a substantial action. The other three countries were just watching on the sidelines. Terumi Mei only brought a few followers. The ninjas sent by Konoha to rescue Gaara were a joint team composed of Kakashi's Team 7 and Konoha's Blue Wolf Beast, Matogai's Team 3. Of course, this included Jiraiya from the sand-hidden village, as well as Chiyo, Gaara's sister and brother, Temari, and Kankuro. It was rare to see such a luxurious lineup, and it was not difficult to see that an unprecedented battle was about to take place. Chapter 236. A steady stream of tailed beast power flowed into the ghetto golem's body, replenishing its shriveled skin. The tightly closed eyes on its head slowly opened, revealing its ferocious eyeballs. It gave off a feeling that it had finally come back to life. Only Nibi's Jinchuriki and the other half of the Kyubi's chakra are left. Suddenly opening his eyes and staring at the eyes of the ghetto Mazo, Dustless breathed a sigh of relief. After so many years of hard work, almost all the 9 bijou that were scattered around the world have been gathered. As long as he finds the last Nibi and the Kyubi's chakra, he can directly resurrect the Jubi. What is that kid Uchiha Obito thinking? I shouldn't have given him the Kyubi's chakra, it was my mistake. Thinking about it, Dustless's heart inevitably sank. Where is the Kyubi's chakra? Only Uchiha Obito knows. It may be in his Kamui dimension. Damn Obito. Suddenly, a light flashed in his mind, and killing intent surged. Dustless scolded in his heart, you better not have any crooked thoughts, otherwise. Humph. For someone like Uchiha Obito, whose will is easily shaken, Dustless didn't want to believe him from the bottom of his heart. He was always on guard. In his opinion, people who can be defeated by Uzumaki Naruto are unreliable people. It seems to be over. Noticing that the tailed beasts in Gaara's body were almost exhausted, Dustless's exhaustion was swept away. Anyone would be physically and mentally exhausted if they just stood there and sealed the tailed beasts for several days. The ninjas of Sand Village and Konoha Village have come to rescue Gaara, and there are a lot of them. Ju's low and hoarse voice suddenly resounded. Previously, his doppelgangers were distributed in the surrounding area within a few kilometers, responsible for the seal's constant vigilance. Hearing this, the members of the Akatsuki who were sealing the bijou opened their eyes and frowned. The seal of the tailed beast still needs a lot of time. Those people are really persistent. Dustless could not help but feel speechless. This group of people really knew how to pick the right time. They did not come earlier or later. Instead, they appeared just a few hours before the seal was completed. Their timing was quite accurate. The spell I set up outside can hold them off for a while, but it shouldn't be able to hold them off for long. Pain's tone was also somewhat helpless. The time of the seal couldn't be interrupted, and Akatsuki didn't have extra manpower to resist them. The seal set up outside couldn't play a fundamental role. In particular, the ninjas who attacked this time were not rookies. Needless to say, Jiraiya and Chiyo, ninjas like Kakashi and Madogai are famous, and their strength can't be underestimated. Why don't we use that technique? There's no other way. Remembering the jutsu that Pain taught them in the past, Itachi suggested. At present, this was the only feasible plan. As for counting on White Zetsu's clone to fight the enemy, it was better to directly move the position. The technique mentioned by Itachi was naturally one of the forbidden techniques of Rinnegan, the powerful forbidden technique Elephant Release Jutsu. After launching the Elephant Release Jutsu, others can get the same appearance as a specific person and can use all the techniques of the specific person, including Kekkei Genkai, but only 30% of all the abilities of the main body. Actions are controlled by the main body, and the main body will lose self-consciousness forever. After the chakra is used up, the controlled body will die, and the original appearance will be restored after death. The viciousness of this technique is beyond doubt. It must use living people as sacrifices, and once the caster's chakra is exhausted, the so-called sacrifice will also completely disappear. That's the only way. Pain nodded in agreement. It was unrealistic to expect White Zetsu's clone to fight against the enemy. After all, the invaders this time are the elites of the 2 villages. They must take out elite troops to fight against the enemy. Let me, Master Haydn, clean them up and let those clowns know that Akatsuki can't be offended at will. When Pain was puzzled and didn't know who to choose to use the Elephant Release Jutsu, Haydn recommended himself, and his excited voice resounded throughout the cave. After nearly 2 days of continuous sealing, Haydn, who was active by nature, couldn't hold back anymore. He was eager to fight with the sand ninjas. I'm happy that you have this intention, but there is a more suitable candidate for this task. You continue to seal the tailed beast. Pain's gaze swept across Fei Duan's body. If Fei Duan had been quiet, he might have considered it. Now, seeing that Fei Duan was so reckless and was mainly venting for his own pleasure, Pain directly ignored him. Sealing the tailed beast naturally can't be wasted. This kind of serious problem is not considered by Haydn. Your IQ will only make the enemy break through faster, it won't play a role. Dead Ale ridiculed the depressed Fei Duan in a strange tone. When he was about to recommend himself, a sharp pain suddenly came from his shoulder. Only then did he remember the injury of his broken arm a few days ago, and he also wisely shut his mouth. Itachi, Kisame, this task will be given to you too. After thinking for a while, Pain's eyes fell on Itachi and Kisame. In the Akatsuki organization, except for Dustless and Conan's Oracle combination, these two were the most trustworthy. Both Sasori and Deidara were injured, and they were definitely not suitable for this task. It seemed that the risk of this task was too great. Pain's eyes fell on Dustless again, and sighed. I also know that you spent a lot of effort to catch the Ichibi a few days ago, and now you have wasted a lot of effort to seal the tailed beast, but I still have to trouble you to go, Dustless. No problem. Dustless just smiled bitterly when he heard this. Pain's words had already reached this point, and there was no way to refuse. Besides, he really didn't trust Itachi and Kisame. The current situation has long been separated from the historical development in Dustless's memory. Maybe, just like when they were chasing the Ichibi, unknown factors like Terumi may will jump out. Chapter 237. Although in the memory of Dustless's previous life, Uchiha Itachi and Kisame still successfully completed the mission. When the ninjas of the two villages came, Gaara had already extracted his Jinchuriki and died. Most of the people of the Akatsuki organization also evacuated, leaving only Deidara and Sasori to stop them. But as the saying goes, plans can't keep up with changes. There are too many accidents in this world. It's not wrong to plan ahead. The leader is really making a big fuss. It's just a group of shrimp soldiers and crab generals. Haydn shouted discontentedly. Obviously, he was very disappointed that Pain didn't choose him. He vented his dissatisfaction. For a battle maniac like Haydn, there was nothing more helpless than now. Shrimp soldiers and crab generals? Hearing this, Sasori, who had been silent all this time, suddenly opened his eyes and stared at Haydn in an unfriendly manner. He said sarcastically, if a powerhouse like Jiraiya is a shrimp soldier, then I can tell you very responsibly that you are not even a waste. Sasori, who was usually silent, sneered. It was no wonder that he was so angry. He was just defeated by Jiraiya 2 days ago. Now Haydn jumped out and said that Jiraiya was a shrimp soldier and crab general not worth mentioning. Doesn't it mean that he was not even a waste in front of Jiraiya? It's ridiculous. Kisame is right. It's worthy of the zombie duo. It's really the kind of idiot with developed limbs. Deidara and Sasori rarely stood in the same trench. They both opened their mouths to Haydn, but Deidara did it more ruthlessly. He also brought the silent Kakuzu along. Bastard, what did you say? Kakuzu immediately glared at Deidara with fire in his eyes. At the same time, he secretly scolded Haydn for being an idiot. Every time he pulled him into trouble, he didn't forget to scrape Deidara fiercely, obviously warning him not to bring him along with him next time he attacked Haydn. Enough, all of you shut up. A powerful voice spread out. It was Pain with a gloomy face. Murderous aura burst out of his body, which calmed the scene down. His gaze swept over Kakuzu, Deidara, and Haydn until the three of them had goosebumps all over their bodies. Only then did he withdraw his gaze. As for Dustless, Itachi, and Kisame, all three of them had finished casting their jutsu. I just need to stall for a few hours. Pain vowed that a few hours of effort would be enough to strip the tailed beast, and then he would be able to retreat safely. How strange, the glint fruit's ability seems to be gone. Dustless's pupils contracted slightly when he sensed the abnormality in his body. He tried to activate the glint fruit's ability but was shocked to find that it had failed. Of course, his body could still use it, but the body in front of him was temporarily unable to activate the glint fruit's ability. Forget it, even if that's the case, it shouldn't be difficult to deal with them. With a sigh, Dustless decided not to dwell on it any further. Tailed beasts were important, and the glint fruit did not belong to the bloodline limit. Even if it did not exist in this temporary body, it was not a big deal. Soon, Dustless, Itachi, and Ghost Mermaid all disappeared from the cave. Kakashi, the strength of that group of guys is unreliable. I heard that Jiraiya-sama was defeated by them. Between the lush forest, several black shadows were clearly visible. It was Team 7 led by Kakashi and Team 3 led by Guy. Kakashi nodded heavily when he heard the words, his mood was particularly depressed. Indeed, be careful, Guy. Taking a deep breath, Kakashi said cautiously. This mission was more difficult than any mission he had carried out in the past. The enemy was not a single enemy, but the strongest organization composed of all S-class, Akatsuki. Sasuke's eldest brother and second brother seemed to be in that organization. Uzumaki Naruto followed Kakashi and said in a heavy voice. His fists were sweating, and his blue eyes were faintly oozing dark red irregular blood. Obviously, he was ready to kill. If it weren't for Uchiha Itachi and Uchiha Dustless, Sasuke might not have defected from Konoha. It was all their fault. As for why Uzumaki Naruto knew about Dustless and Itachi's news, it was because Jiraiya had already told them about the Akatsuki organization. Naruto, now is not the time to be righteous. The focus is on the 5th Kazekage, not Sasuke. Seeing Uzumaki Naruto's murderous aura overflowing, Kakashi warned him in a rare tone. As a ninja, if you can't even figure out the nature of the mission, it's better to go home and retire. I understand, Kaka-sensei. Uzumaki Naruto's pupils dimmed, and the dense and oppressive murderous aura in his eyes disappeared. His mood was quite low, and he was silent. Obviously, he still cared about Uchiha Sasuke. Obsession is too deep. Kakashi took back his gaze from Uzumaki Naruto and sighed. He knew that Sasuke's shadow had been imprinted in Naruto's heart forever. It was deeply rooted and could not be erased. The so-called fetter is actually a double-edged sword. Sometimes it's the source of power, giving people inexhaustible power. Sometimes it's also a nightmarish existence, and the shadow in the heart can never be waved away. A weak breeze came head-on, and the fallen dead leaves on the ground were rolled up like the autumn wind and blown to the sky. They were particularly weak and fragile, like a kite with a broken string, they could only drift with the wind. Seeing this scene, Kakashi's eyes flashed with confusion. Perhaps the will of fire may be like the fallen leaves in front of him, and there will be no place for him in the world after this. Don't be confused, I'm here to take you on the road of sublimation, the road to the gate of hell. A black figure descended from the sky. A man in a black trench coat slowly landed in front of Kakashi and the others. He wore a wooden bamboo hat, tied with a white ribbon, and tied with many bells. His face couldn't be seen clearly, but when the breeze blew, the bells would make a pleasant sound. Chapter 238. Kakashi and Mato-Gai's pupils suddenly shrank, and they simultaneously stood in front of their subordinates, staring at the figure in front of them with awe-inspiring eyes. A black trench coat embroidered with red clouds, a cloak with bells, the fingernails of his thumb and toe were all dyed black and purple, especially the ninja headband with scratches on it. In the entire ninja world, only Akatsuki dressed like this. Long time no see, Kakashi. Raising his head, Dustless looked at Kakashi, who was wearing a mask. He slightly raised his hand, revealing a rather gentle smile, giving people the feeling of bathing in the spring breeze. His sunny face was approachable, as gentle as the morning sun. He didn't look like a member of the dark and ambitious organization Akatsuki at all. Dustless, it's you. Kakashi's eyes widened, looking at the familiar face in horror. Looking at Dustless's black trench coat, his eyes instantly became as cold as a knife. His eyes seemed to be able to cut people into pieces, very ferocious. Kakashi, don't show such a gloomy expression, we can sit down and chat, after all, we were comrades in arms in the past. Looking at the cautious Kakashi with a smile, Dustless restrained his aura. He didn't intend to fight with Kakashi, Guy, and their subordinates. I also hope so, but I'm sorry, we still have a mission, get out of the way, Dustless. Suppressing the violent tumbling in his heart, Kakashi said in a hoarse voice, while secretly gathering chakra in the palm of his right hand. He could vaguely feel the sharpness of chakra piercing through everything. Raish. Looking at the palm of Kakashi, Dustless's eyes flashed with a trace of regret, sighed and said, is that so? But I also have a mission, Kakashi, and the content of the mission is to stop your teams 7 and 3, then go to hell, Odama Rasengan. The orange figure swept straight out like a cannonball, passing by Kakashi's side, shuttling straight away. Instantly in front of Dustless, the palm of his hand was impressively large chakra energy ball. Naruto, come back, that guy can ignore physical attacks. Kakashi cursed, hurriedly shouted at Uzumaki Naruto. The urgency in his tone could be heard by anyone. Dustless's strange ability to turn his whole body into light, Jiraiya also told him before coming. Kyubi, didn't Jiraiya teach you that when adults are talking, children can't interrupt? Seeing Uzumaki Naruto appear in front of him, Wuchen couldn't help but frown, and his voice became cold. As for the super-large Rasengan that rushed over, he directly ignored it. His whole body was covered with a golden luster, and the hard and huge ribs suddenly wrapped Wuchen in layers, forming an absolute defense, watertight like an iron bucket. Boom! 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 The blue energy ball suddenly burst, the gushing air waves blew Uzumaki Naruto away, and the scattered strong impact blew the ground bare. Why didn't he use the trick that ignores physical attacks? Kakashi frowned. He thought that Dustless would directly use elementalization to directly ignore the Rasengan's attack, but he didn't expect that Dustless would choose to resist. Oh! Burn, youth! A very loud voice resounded behind Dustless. He turned his head and saw Mato Guy. After casually glancing at the hot-blooded watermelon head, Dustless directly ignored him and looked at Kakashi in front of him. I was underestimated. Mato Guy saw Dustless looking at Kakashi again, but he was not angry. He was born to be an optimistic person. There was no word discouraged in the dictionary of life, but it turned into a strong motivation. Strong and powerful legs wrapped around the blue chakra and swept straight toward Dustless in Kansusanu. Konoha Vajra Whirlwind. Wuchen seemed to be aware that the attack coming from behind was quite powerful. He turned his head again and looked at the powerful force that was whizzing towards him with interest. Good opportunity. Seeing Dustless's eyes focused on Mato Guy, Kakashi's eyes suddenly burst out, and at the same time, the silver light in his hand turned into irregular thunder and lightning, and rushed toward Dustless with all his strength. It seems that he wants to attack Dustless from the front and back. Boom boom boom, two powerful forces suddenly hit Kansusanu's body, causing many cracks, which continued to expand and gradually spread throughout Kansusanu, faintly showing signs of collapse. Did it succeed? Kakashi and Mato Guy looked at Kansusanu full of cracks, and when they thought that Kansusanu was about to burst, Dustless's harsh voice sounded. Do you still need to think? Of course it didn't succeed. The thin body erupted with strong chakra, and a steady stream of Kansusanu, and the cracks that had spread before were not only instantly repaired, but the golden giant became stronger and stronger. Boom! Boom! There were 2 consecutive dull loud noises, and there was a strange blood flower in the air. Then, Mato Guy and Kakashi were seen flying backward, lying on the ground half dead and unable to move their bodies. Kansusanu's powerful force directly hit them and made them vomit blood, and their internal organs seemed to be dislocated. What a strong technique! Kakashi looked gloomily at dustless inside Kansusanu, and an unprecedented sense of powerlessness suddenly rose in his heart, and his body was in pain, but the physical and mental devastation made him feel even more deeply. Kakashi, who was shrouded in the golden light of Kansusanu, felt a sense of depression and despair in the depths of his soul, making him unable to resist. Mato Guy was the same, and his mood was particularly depressed. It doesn't matter if he was defeated by the enemy, but if he was beaten by the enemy to the point that he couldn't resist, then it's another matter. Facing the godlike Uchiha dustless in front of him, his heart was extremely heavy. Chapter 239. Dustless easily defeated Might Guy and Kakashi with his bare hands. It was like giving everyone a shot in the heart, including all the members of Team 7 and Team 3. They were all afraid of Dustless. Of course, there are exceptions to everything. The orange figure standing resolutely was particularly dazzling, attracting everyone's attention. This kid is really the biggest problem. Lowering his head, Wuchen looked at Uzumaki Naruto, who was half a head shorter than himself. Wuchen nodded slightly, and a faint smile appeared on his face. To be honest, he really has an indescribable curiosity about this boy with a charming personality. To some extent, this world is following Uzumaki Naruto's footsteps. Boy, why are you so obsessed with me? It's Itachi who slaughtered the Uchiha, and it's also him who killed Sasuke's parents. This matter seems to have nothing to do with me. You have no reason to kill me. The golden luster quickly disappeared, and the majestic and overbearing aura was restrained. With his hands in front of him, he stared at Uzumaki Naruto with deep and bright eyes, looking forward to his answer. His parents. Aren't they your parents? Just how heartless can you be? His huge fists were clenched tightly, his face was ferocious, and there was a faint red light behind him. For Uzumaki Naruto, who valued friendship, Dustless's words greatly stimulated him. Even because of excessive anger, the Kyubi chakra in his body began to go berserk. The Uchiha family is a cursed family. The so-called brothers are just simple parts, even parents are no exception. The Uchiha are born with ruthlessness, and they will die with ruthlessness. It's quite suitable for the Uchiha's ending. Shut up, you bastard. Uzumaki Naruto's eyes were instantly swallowed by blood, and the chakra went berserk. His body roared like a cannonball, and sharp claws emerged from his 5 fingers, piercing straight towards Dustless's throat. You're fast, but it's still not enough. With a sneer, Dustless sidestepped the sharp claws, and at the same time, his strong and powerful right arm suddenly grabbed Uzumaki Naruto, and his body broke out with a force that directly pressed him to the ground. Boom! A huge pit suddenly appeared on the ground, and his palm was like a black hole, absorbing Uzumaki Naruto's Kyubi chakra. Although I don't know how he did it, it seems that he can't ignore physical attacks anymore. Kakashi's pupils slightly narrowed, and the light in his eyes flashed. After careful observation, he found that Dustless used his body to resist the opponent's attacks, and he didn't use elementization to ignore the opponent's attacks as before. This way, it's not impossible. The despair in his heart disappeared, and Kakashi looked at Guy. Obviously, the latter also realized the loophole in Dustless's plan, and his eyes were filled with a beast-like luster. I was discovered. It's chakras chakra tensei's chakras, jutsu, jujitsu, with jutsu, and jujitsu's jutsu, jutsus, that's SSSS, Let me go. Uzumaki Naruto, who was bound by dustless, began to struggle violently, madly twisting his body, and his strong force resisted dustless, trying to escape dustless's shackles. However, Uzumaki Naruto helplessly found that the big hand on his head seemed to have the power of tens of thousands of pounds, and no matter how he resisted, he couldn't break free. Ha! The dazzling light coming from the front made dustless's pupils suddenly shrank, and his brows slightly wrinkled. He slowly raised his head, and it was Kakashi and Raikiri in his hand. You don't know what's good for you. A cold smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and the cold air surged all over his body. The scarlet eternal Manjikyu Sharingan was exposed to the air, and the evil eye power in the frame of the glasses began to rage. Wouch! Suddenly looking up, he saw a giant golden arm falling from the sky, like a falling meteorite, mercilessly smashing towards the stunned Kakashi. From the shape, color, and chakra fluctuation, it was undoubtedly Kansusunu, but it was localized. I can't hide. It seems that I can only use that to devour him. Staring at the giant arm falling down, Kakashi's eyes flashed with determination, and the three Tomo Sharingan also turned into the same Manjikyu Sharingan as Uchiha Obito. Leave it to me, Konoha's blue wolf beast, Kakashi. Mato Gai looked at the falling giant arm eagerly, and there was no fear in his shining eyes, and his heart was boiling, and under everyone's surprised gaze, he roared. Sixth gate, open. Mato Gai's body suddenly flashed with the luster of emerald, and all aspects of his physical strength were strengthened several times in an instant, and because of the fast speed, Dustless could only catch an afterimage. Hashimen Tonku. Sure enough, it's an extremely dangerous technique. This is only the sixth gate, and it's so powerful. If the last gate is also opened, thinking of this, Dustless unconsciously shuddered, and suddenly remembered the scene of Madara being beaten by Hashimen Gai. Although Mato Gai's performance was just a flash in the pan, it was enough to attract Dustless's attention. Super Peacock. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, Mato Gai waved his fist, and a dense number of flaming fists came out of his hand, and the unprecedented number was overwhelming and dazzling. The endless flaming fists rushed straight to Kansusanu's arm in the sky. Bang bang bang, the two came into close contact, and Kansusanu's golden arm suddenly trembled fiercely, and the blazing fists were not only hot, but also very domineering, and directly broke the localized Kansusanu's arm. Damn bastard, I ignored such a dangerous person. Dustless's face was gloomy, although there was an essential difference between the localized Kansusanu and the complete body, and the power and defense were even more of a qualitative difference, but it was so easy to break it, which showed the horror of the Hashimen Tonku. Or it showed that Mato Gai was extraordinary. Chapter 240. Uzumaki Naruto also took advantage of this opportunity to get rid of Dustless's shackles and quickly pulled away from Dustless. This group of guys can't be looked at with ordinary eyes. Kakashi is the same, Uzumaki Naruto is also the same. Konoha's Ash Wolf is extremely dangerous. Although there was still a relaxed smile on his face, Dustless's heart was actually tense. Glint glinting fruit, can still be used, but now he can't use it for the time being, and he no longer has the powerful advantage of being immune to physical attacks. The most fatal thing is that this temporary body only has 30% of the strength of the main body. It may be enough to deal with others, but Dustless always felt that it's not enough to deal with the three people in front of him. Especially after witnessing the horror of Hashimen Tonku, Dustless was even more worried. Just opening the sixth gate, Mato Gai is already so terrifying. After completely opening the eighth gate, he can even compete with Otsutsuki Kagaya, even if it's just a flash in the pan. As long as I can deal with the three people in front of me, as for the others, it's not a big deal. Looking at Haruno Sakura and the members of the third squad, Dustless secretly thought to himself. He directly ignored them. These people were quite sensible. They knew that it was not a battle of the same level, so from the beginning, they hid far away to watch the battle. Guy, Dustless's goal may be the Kyuubi in Naruto's body, we must protect him. His eyes were focused on Dustless. Due to high tension, Kakashi's hair was covered with sweat, and his clothes were all soaked with sweat. Although the ultimate goal of Akatsuki is unclear, it is undoubtedly related to the Bijou, and their goal naturally includes Uzumaki Naruto. He's coming, Kakashi. Seeing Kakashi absent-mindedly thinking about other things, Mato Guy's loud voice reminded him, like a rolling thunder, pulling Kakashi out of his contemplation. Slightly stunned, Kakashi subconsciously raised his head. So fast. His pupils suddenly shrank. Dustless had completed the hand seals in the blink of an eye, and a wide range of flames whizzed toward him. The strength of these three brothers was not only incredible, but their speed of forming hand seals was also impeccable. Kakashi thought that Uchiha Itachi was the fastest, but now it seems that Dustless was even faster. The dynamic ability of the eyeballs could not even keep up with Dustless's speed of forming hand seals, and all he could see were blurry afterimages. Fire style, grand fire annihilation. The crimson wave of fire came straight at them. Its range was frighteningly large, with a diameter of more than 20 meters. It was like a huge wave that could topple mountains and overturn seas. The sky was dyed a fiery red, and it was exceptionally magnificent and dazzling. There was simply no way to retreat. This guy is really terrifying. He can use Katan to this extreme. It's obviously an A-class Katan, but he can exert the power of an S-class ninjutsu. Kakashi and Mato Guy looked at each other, and they could see the disbelief and astonishment in each other's eyes. It's not difficult for anyone to exert the power of a fixed-class ninjutsu. There's no free time to dodge, it seems that I can only take it head-on. After calculating the possibility of avoiding, Kakashi's eyes were immediately replaced by determination. The scarlet three tomo twisted together, and the power of his eyes was several times stronger than the previous three tomo state. His pupils focused on the incoming wave of fire, and the messy blood spread throughout his pupils like a spider web. Buzz, the void suddenly trembled, making bursts of sorrowful cries, as if the end of the world was coming. The sky began to collapse, and everything in the world also showed signs of collapse. Looking up at the sky, only to see the endless sky violently and madly distorted, blurred like a paste, very sticky, like a swamp, stirring up the terrifying devouring power. The monstrous wave of fire suddenly became weak and fragile, from the fierce wolf just now to a soft sheep, like a lonely boat in a storm. In the blink of an eye, it was wiped out by the majestic devouring power, as if nothing had happened. The void that was dyed fiery red was restored to a clear sky again. Only the residual heat in the air proved that a thrilling confrontation had happened before. Kakashi, this is, looking at the flame group that was instantly devoured, Mato Guy's throat unconsciously choked. Even if he was not the target of Kakashi's ninjutsu, he felt a devouring wave that made his heart palpitate. It seemed to be a deep-sea behemoth in the depths of the void, without a physical body, without a trace, but it was real. The moment it opened its bloody mouth, it could annihilate any existence in the world. Dustless also looked at the scene in front of him incredulously. The huge spatial fluctuations could be felt by people, especially him in the center of it. A mere outsider can use the Manjikyu Sharingan so skillfully, worthy of a genius ninja. Dustless, who recovered from the shock, nodded slightly and praised Kakashi without hesitation. Kakashi's Manjikyu Sharingan is Obito's, but its ability seems to be different. Obito's Manjikyu Sharingan can only passively defend at present, but Kakashi's Manjikyu Sharingan belongs to the offensive type, which can distort space and time. Staring at the pale and sweating Kakashi, Dustless's performance was indifferent. This was expected. The Uchiha clan's burden of using the Manjikyu Sharingan is great, and Kakashi, who doesn't have Uchiha blood, is naturally more burdened. Kakashi, according to your physical fitness, you can use this jutsu 3 or 4 times at most. Dustless looked at Kakashi calmly and said calmly. The consumption of Kamui is great, whether it's the amount of chakra or the spiritual power, the more powerful the jutsu, the greater the cost. This is the truth of the ancient times. Dustless's words naturally attracted the attention of Mato Guy and Uzumaki Naruto. They looked at Kakashi, who had a hunched back, as if all the bones in his body were sucked out, and he was gasping for breath, and their eyes were filled with worry. Ah! What a touching bond. In that case, I will send you to the underworld to continue your destiny. Chapter 241. Unprecedented exhaustion spread through his nerve endings to all parts of his body. Kakashi's body was dizzy and almost fell down. If it wasn't for his strong belief, he might have already fainted. It's not that easy to kill us, Dustless. Slowly standing up, Kakashi said, not to be outdone. Especially after seeing that Dustless could only rely on defense to defend against their attacks and couldn't use elementization like before, his confidence suddenly rose. The most troublesome elementization was no longer possible, but there was still a chance of winning. Your confidence is not small, then I want to see how you resist. A sneer appeared on his calm face, and his quiet eyes shot out cold killing intent. Dustless's body instantly lost its texture, like a space ninjutsu. Damn, why is his speed still so fast? With a haze on his face, Kakashi's heart fell to the bottom. Under the observation of his Sharingan, he saw a black shadow whistling in a straight line. It could no longer be described as fast. Guy, who opened the 6th gate, apparently also noticed Dustless's attack. His spirit was tense, and the emerald green light on the surface of his body became stronger, flashing with dazzling brilliance. Strong and powerful iron fists danced, and countless flaming fists whistled out. Morning Peacock. Groups of flaming iron fists rushed straight forward, and the degree of power gathered was enough to crush a mountain. The power is extraordinary. Dustless's mouth raised into a smile, and instead of slowing down, he sped up. At the same time, his scarlet Sharingan rapidly turned, reflecting an extremely evil eye power, completely different from Kakashi's. The focus of his eyes was the group of flaming fists. Amaterasu. The dark flame that seemed to come from hell suddenly burned, and countless flaming fists were instantly swallowed by the black flame, and in just a moment, they were all annihilated. In the endless sky, only the black ghost fire was left. Failed, but with the black flame blocking, it seems that he can't directly pass through. Carefully observing the black Amaterasu, Kakashi breathed a sigh of relief. Although Might Guy's trick was broken, the black flame in front of him was harmful to both him and Dustless couldn't directly pass through. Can't come over. Are you kidding me, Kakashi? The burning black hellfire suddenly trembled and rippled like a water surface. It was slightly distorted. Immediately, a small whirlpool appeared on the boiling Amaterasu inferno barrier. The whirlpool continued to expand until it formed a hole. Dustless directly passed through it. Dustless's eternal Mangekyo does not have the ability to control Amaterasu, but in the past, he defeated Uchiha Sasuke and took his abilities, including Sasuke's ability to control Amaterasu. Controlling the form of Amaterasu is just one of my many abilities. Seeing Kakashi's sluggish face, Wuchen explained softly. At the same time, the eternal kaleidoscope rotated, and the eye power fluctuated. The black willow, the wisps behind him seemed to be attracted by the god of fire, and they collapsed and disappeared without a trace. This guy's strength is on a completely different level from ours. Despair appeared in his dark blue eyes. Uzumaki Naruto stared at the approaching Dustless in horror. He instinctively took a step back, his face full of fear. With every step Dustless took, Uzumaki Naruto's powerlessness and despair became stronger. His bones seemed to be numb, and he couldn't resist at all. The most frustrating thing in the world is this situation. The enemy is in front of you, but you can't take revenge. Even the most important thing is to face the enemy's trampling. Kid, you seem to be in trouble. As the Kyubi's Jinchuriki, you are so afraid of the enemy. It really makes this old man feel ashamed. A hoarse and gloomy voice suddenly sounded in his mind. The vicissitudes of life brought endless contempt and ridicule. In Uzumaki Naruto's spiritual world, the nine-tailed orange fox's voice spread to the sky. Smelly fox, shut up for me. Uzumaki Naruto also chose to ridicule him. His tone was hysterical, and his eyes were scarlet, filled with strong hostility. Good eyes, kid, you finally look like the Kyubi's Jinchuriki. Lying on the ground leisurely, Kyubi raised his eyelids. His deep eyes seemed to penetrate Uzumaki Naruto's body and stared at Uchiha dustless in the outside world. His eyes were full of wisdom. After closing his eyes and pondering for a moment, when he opened his bloody eyes again, his face was full of determination. Kid, I can lend my strength to you. In your dreams, your chakra will affect my mind. Don't even think about it. Uzumaki Naruto immediately denied it. Jiraiya once told him that once Kyubi swallowed his mind, he would destroy and kill regardless of friend or foe. Is that so? But right now, you don't seem to have any other choice except to accept my strength. Kyubi narrowed his eyes and felt the evil chakra in Dustless's pupils. His soul was palpitating. The ominous chakra was even more evil than him. It happened to be the same as Uchiha Madara. Don't worry, I won't control your mind. This guy in front of you is your enemy, and also my enemy. Although I don't know what you want to do with the tailed beast, it won't be a good thing. And you don't want to watch your sensei and friends get killed directly by this kid. Kyubi said. His tone didn't have the killing intent and hatred in the past. It was rare to have a little more human feeling, and it always gave a much softer feeling. Uzumaki Naruto's heart was deeply touched, especially Kyubi's last sentence. If he doesn't have the power to subdue Dustless, his sensei and friends will be completely killed. Uzumaki Naruto's reverse scale is his friend. Anyone who dares to trample on it, he will fight with his life on the line. Smelly fox, I will accompany you this time. Chapter 242. It's no wonder that Uzumaki Naruto and Kyubi colluded with each other. In the face of Dustless, the unprecedented mountain, both of them were overwhelmed. Anyone with a little brain would choose to join forces, not to mention the scheming Kyubi. In the face of absolute interests, there is no hatred that can't be resolved, especially at this moment of life and death. Golden chakra spread all over his body, full of vitality, like the warm sunshine in the cold winter, unusually serene, and the warm luster was very lazy. Unlike Kyubi's previous chakra, which was full of evil and hatred, Uzumaki Naruto, who was surrounded by golden light at this time, gave a feeling of extraordinarily approachable, but it was obviously Kyubi's chakra. Naruto, Mato Guy and Kakashi looked at each other, and they could see the horror and disbelief in each other's eyes, especially Mato Guy's eyes almost popped out, looking at Uzumaki Naruto as if he saw a ghost. There is no doubt that the chakra in front of them belongs to Kyubi, but it's completely opposite to Kyubi's evil chakra. The golden chakra on Uzumaki Naruto's body is extraordinarily peaceful. This form is Kyubi's trick. Dustless's face stiffened, and his eyes fell from Kakashi to Uzumaki Naruto. The corner of his mouth twitched without a trace, staring at the new form of Uzumaki Naruto, and his face became gloomy. On Uzumaki Naruto's face, 6 beard-shaped veins turned black, and his hair rose to form the shape of 2 horns. His clothes were black, and a white magatama appeared at the collar, and it was a golden chakra coat. Damn beast, do you think I can't do anything to you like this? A cold smile came from Dustless's mouth, and his pupils surged with monstrous hostility. It seems that the pressure on Kyubi was too great, so this old guy had to lend his chakra to Uzumaki Naruto. And it was the kind that didn't hold back at all. However, what Dustless didn't expect was that just by lending his chakra to Uzumaki Naruto, this kid's appearance changed so much. Sure enough, this boy is the child of prophecy, it is not nonsense. Coupled with Otsutsuki's identity as the reincarnation of Azura, God will not let him be immortal. Dustless's pupils shrank slightly as he thought to himself. Although Uzumaki Naruto is now a scumbag, his strength in the later stage is obvious to all. It is entirely due to the Kyubi in his body and Otsutsuki's identity as the reincarnation of Azura. Of course, it has a lot to do with his hard work. It wasn't hard to see that this world was actually a place where bloodlines mattered. Gru. Naruto, your current state is. Kakashi-sensei, I feel pretty good. My body is filled with boundless power. I can easily smash him into pieces with a single punch. Uzumaki Naruto's cat face showed a look of enjoyment. He felt the huge chakra in his body involuntarily moving his muscles and bones, and there was a bone-cracking sound. It seems that he is not controlled by the bijou, and this huge chakra was given to him by Kyubi. Seeing this, Kakashi breathed a sigh of relief, and the rock blocking his chest finally fell down. With a smile on his face, he teased Dustless, although I don't know what happened to Kyubi and Naruto, it's all thanks to you, Dustless. It's not difficult to see that Kyubi was afraid of Dustless's huge pressure, so he cooperated with the human he hated and lent his almost endless chakra to Uzumaki Naruto to resist Dustless. Don't you think it's ridiculous to think that you can control the battle with just a sealed bijou, Kakashi? Looking faintly at Uzumaki Naruto, who was desperately leaking golden chakra, Dustless shook his head, and the corner of his mouth curled into a mocking smile. Even if he was defeated, as long as he could hold these people before the chakra was exhausted and by enough time for the sealed bijou, it would be a victory. What's more, Dustless also wanted to see what kind of ability Uzumaki Naruto had in this mode. Oh. The movement over there is really big, it seems that monsters are gathering there. Hoshigaki Kisame and Itachi frowned when they saw the energy fluctuations in the air, especially Hoshigaki Kisame. The shark's face was full of curiosity. The sudden eruption of chakra just now gave him great pressure. That endless chakra was not something that humans could have. Itachi and Hoshigaki Kisame were naturally facing Jiraiya, Chio, and the sand-hidden village's ninja. Don't worry about the movement over there, just complete Pain's task with peace of mind. His eyes fell on Jiraiya, and the waves in Itachi's eyes returned to calmness. Obviously, he wasn't calm either. The intense fluctuations over there could be clearly felt even several kilometers away. It was enough to show how terrifying the collision in the center of the confrontation was. Jiraiya also looked at the distant sky with a heavy expression. The horrifying moving fluctuations made him feel powerless, and the chakra scattered all over the void made him feel even more terrified. Even if Jiraiya went over there, he couldn't change the reality. Let me see what's the difference between you and the bijou. With a cold smile, Dustless's chakra began to rage. Even if this temporary body only had 30% of the strength of the original body, the chakra contained in it was comparable to the bijou. For peerless heroes like Hashirama and Uchiha Madara, the chakra in their bodies was even better than the bijou. The golden brilliance covered Dustless, and the evil chakra was like the incarnation of disaster. It was completely opposite to the peaceful chakra of Uzumaki Naruto. It seemed to be the origin of evil, the origin of evil. An awe-inspiring momentum floated out of Dustless's body, overbearing and peerless like tens of thousands of sharp knives. All the ground under Dustless's feet turned into smoke. The substantialized chakra became more and more solid and majestic. A number of dense bones and human tendons quickly formed, the body expanded and rose without limit, covering the sky and the sun. The endless void was suddenly covered by shadows, and the ground reflected a ferocious giant with the Tengu armor. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul, YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.